This is Gary Newbon, the Eventmasters Sports Ambassador. In this racing special for Eventmasters, my guest is a legendary national hunt jockey, Steve Smith Eccles. He had 8 winners in his career during the Cheltenham Festival, and he won the champion hurdle 3 times on the trot. Tremendous performance with See You Then. He had a reputation of being a bit of a ladies' man, and during this interview, you'll hear birds, but of a feathered kind. He lives in the country, and the birds love Steve Smith Eccles. There's a great story about something that happened to you at Aintree. Can you tell me what that was about?
Yes, well, I'm not proud of this story, but it does make people laugh. It was back in 1986. I can't remember what I was due to ride. Classified, that was it. But anyway, I'd had a good Cheltenham 3 weeks before the Aintree meeting. And on the first day of Aintree, I rode a horse called River Kerryog, who won the Supreme Novices at Cheltenham. And he ran on the first day, the Thursday, and he got stuffed. And I was a little bit depressed. So driving home, or driving to the hotel we were due to stay at with my girlfriend at the time.
Newmarket trainer Di Hayne, I think.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah.
She just started training, and she informed me that we're going to go out for dinner on that Thursday night with these owners. And they were a little bit boring, so I thought, wow, I can't be having that. Feeling simply because the following day, the Friday, I only had the one ride and it was no good. And so I didn't really give it much of a chance. So I said, look, I'm not riding anything great tomorrow. I'm going to go out with the Irish boys in Liverpool, have a night out with them. So, as you can imagine, blazing row ensued. The upshot was, if I went out to Liverpool in the evening with these Irish jockeys, there was no way I'm coming back to stay in the hotel, right? And we were staying at the Royal Hotel at Southport, right on the seafront. So I said to myself, well, I can't be having that bloody women telling you what to do and not what to do. So I went down and I thought about getting a cab, and I went in the bar in the hotel and I had a drink. Why I was thinking about getting a cab. And I found out, rather than going to Liverpool to go out with the Irish boys, just round the corner, literally just round the corner, Ginger McCain trained, and he was throwing a party. So I thought I'll nip round there and have a drink with them lot, because I know Ginger well. Anyway, one thing led to another. Arrives back at the hotel around about 2 o'clock in the morning, knocks on the door, politely told to go and sling my hook elsewhere. Detail as to what she said. And so what do? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You got nowhere to stay. I thought, bugger it. I got a brand new Mercedes. It's stuck right out the front door. I won't sleep in the back seat. I've slept in worse places, I can assure you. So it was a cold night. I get my top coat, my jackets, and I snuggle up on the back seat, and I'm fast asleep. 45 minutes, 50 minutes later, I come to a state of consciousness. I'm thinking to myself, where am I? I'm in the back seat of my car. Moving. With that, I burst up from out the back seat underneath 3 jackets, and there's a 16-year-old Scouser driving my brand new Merc down the M62 at 90 miles an hour. Well, if you think he had a shock, or I had a shock rather, you should have seen him. He, like a stuck pig, ran it up the hard shoulder and legged it across these fields. What do you do? So I thought, right, okay, come on. Now you're in a bit of bother here. You're on a motorway, you don't know where you are. So I drove down to the next junction, get my bearings, drive back to the hotel, got into the back seat, went to sleep, but making sure I took my keys out the ignition this time. Right? And anyway, the following day, it's almost as though it never happened. And I can't wait to tell somebody. Luckily for me, Di let me get my clothes out the hotel. And anyway, I got to the races. And the first person I see when I go in the changing rooms is Johnny Buckingham, my valet. And I tell him the story. He then tells somebody else. And before you know it, I'm on BBC One telling David Vine this story. Right? Okay, you're supposed to be a professional. right? And you're telling people you're drunk and whatever. And all of a sudden, I thought to myself, well, I'm in trouble here. I'm in trouble here. Anyway, the Friday, the horse that I was due to ride, yeah, obviously no good, didn't do anything. That night, I went out and stayed with Miriam and John Frankham. They were staying in a little hotel on the Wirral. So I was a bit sheepish, went out with them. I was in bed for 8 o'clock, got up the next morning and I'm having breakfast, right? Because I had a decent weight. And I'm looking around the breakfast room while I'm eating my bacon and egg, and everybody's reading the paper, and the front pages are staring at me. And I'm looking over, and it says, "Jockey kidnapped, jockey taken for a who the that?" And I'm looking, and I realise it's me. So my track record in the Grand National up to that date was very, very poor. I don't think I'd ever completed. So I'm riding the second favourite classified for Nicky Henderson in the Grand National, right, on Grand National Day, 1986. So I thought, right, this is shit or bust for my career. Anyway, the first horse I rode was Kathy's Lad. He went out and won the first race. Sealer then got beat in the 2 mile 6 race. The second race, he didn't get a yard over 2 miles. And the third race was the Grand National, classified, saved my bacon. He finished third to West Tip. And if he hadn't finished, I would be sitting here talking to you now.
With this current virus, Steve, what effect is it going to have on horse racing, do you think, eventually?
Well, I think certain jockeys and certain trainers and certain owners are going to struggle because I can't see this going away that quickly. And okay, racing behind closed doors is one thing, but lots of courses and people depend on the actual public being on site. So I think it's gonna give people a right kick in the backside.
Now, you wrote 876 winners in 21 years. And you come from Pinxton in Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire border. How did it all start for you as a jockey? Because your dad was a miner, it was a mining village.
Yeah. When I think back, I was extremely lucky. I was lucky that my father loved his racing and he used to watch it every Saturday afternoon on black and white TV, and be about 6 or 7 years of age. And I'd say, as I walked by the sofa, I'm going to be a jockey when I grow up, Dad, and carry on walking. Never watch racing. And I was grammar school educated, and all the way through my schooling, my careers officer used to say, "Right then, Mr. Smith Eccles, where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm going into racing," and he was absolutely flummoxed. And if I'm honest, I never actually sat on a horse or a pony. Apart, the only thing I'd ever sat on prior to going into racing was a donkey on Skegness Beach when we used to go for. And my mother, God bless her, I don't know how she got these 3 trainers' names, but she wrote off the 3. One was Arthur Stevenson, Cock of the North. He didn't want apprentices, he wanted paid lads, so I was no good to him. The other was David Nicholson's father, Frenchy Nicholson. He didn't want anybody over 5 stone 7. So as a kid, I used to deliver 100-weight sacks of coal, so I was a bit muscled up by then. And the third one was Harry Thompson Jones in Newmarket. And how she got his name on, but he took me on a month's trial. And as I say, the first horse I ever saw in my life is when I walked through those stable doors on July 28th, 1970.
And your first flat race, because you started with that, you won and you beat Lester Piggott.
My first ride I ever had on the flat was at Yarmouth, and I think I'd been an apprentice about a couple of years, so I'd be about 17. And I rode in a mile, 3-year-old maiden fillies race with a barrier start. This shows how long ago it was. And I beat one home, and that person was Lester Piggott.
What was the name of the horse? Do you remember?
Called Fine Leg.
Yeah.
You always remember your first ride, your first winner, and your first lady.
I wonder if that was bred by the Warwickshire in England fast bowler David Brown, because he used to name all his horses after cricket terms. That would be interesting.
That would be interesting to find out. But Tom had an owner who named all his horses after cricketing sort of.
Oh, right.
Fine Leg being one of them.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but they're all cricket orientated.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, you get to Cheltenham eventually with your #1 stable jockey, eventually with Nicky Henderson, and you win See You Then for 3 consecutive years in the Champion Hurdle. What a feat that was in 1985, 86, 87. Tell us the story about how you got that late ride for the first time.
Okay, so I was actually retained by Nicky Henderson in those early days, the mid-80s. I was retained to ride all his horses, apart from this one horse, See You Then. It was owned by an Italian count, right? And he had some deal going down with Frankum. So he wanted Frankum to ride it. Okay, so fair enough. I rode everything else, and he had plenty of other good horses. But it was bought after finishing second. No, they bought it just before it finished second in the Triumph Hurdle the year before. Okay. It then went on to run in the 85 Champion Hurdle. Only had 2 runs before that, and didn't really show Champion Hurdle form. And he was going off as a 16-1 shot. Okay. Now, Franklin was due to ride it. Now, I rode River Kerryog in the Supreme Novices on that day, and I won the Supreme Novices. The second race was the Arkle Trophy, a novice steeplechase. I didn't have a ride in the race. Frankum rode a horse for Fred Winter called the Reject, and this fell. It fell, and as it was getting up, Frankum got hung up. His leg got stuck in the stirrups, and this horse got up, and Frankum was being brought up upside down beneath its back legs. And just as that was happening, one of the fence attendants rushed over and grabbed it. If he hadn't done that, that horse would have galloped off. Franklin would have been dead. Okay, so Franklin was pretty shook up after this. The third race was a Champion Hurdle. See You Then was a 16-1 shot. Franklin wasn't physically injured, but he was obviously really sort of shook up. And he said, look, that's me done for the day, boys. So I got the ride on See You Then. Now, if Frankum, or rather, if See You Then had been a 5-4 on shot, you can guarantee he'd have ridden it. But because it was a 16-1, he cried off. And quite rightly so. I mean, that's one of the most scary things a jockey can ever sort of ever happen to a jockey. And I think that's the only reason I got the ride on See You Then that day. And then the rest is history.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Listening to the background there, you're still attracting the birds, by the way. I can hear them chirping.
Areas. My left me then when they died. They passed away a few years back. And I've still got them. Yeah, they're always tweeting in the background a bit.
Yeah. Now, Frankum, go on.
Don't you worry.
Now, Frankum had to retire because he had a similar incident with the Reject as well.
Story that same horse. I mean, very rarely would you see a jockey get hung up. Okay, I saw that, and once in Australia when I was riding out there back in the late 80s. I've seen it on 2 occasions in my 25 years in racing. Blow me, the next time the Reject ran, which was about 3 weeks later at Chepstow, it happened again. Luckily enough, the fence attendants caught the horse as he was being dragged along.
Yeah.
And he came in, once again, he wasn't injured. He came in, threw his saddle on the bench and says, that's me done, boys, I'm out of here. And he just walked away just like that.
Yeah. Amazing.
Amazing, but true.
Yeah, no, amazing story. You had 8 festival winners at Cheltenham. I mean, that's pretty good for a jockey, isn't it? Over the years.
It was in those days.
Yeah.
You know, jockeys didn't get as many rides as they do today. They didn't have age, didn't like that. So you go racing to the festival, and if you had 1 or maybe 2 rides a day, you'd be more than lucky. Whereas now, the guys are riding virtually in every race.
Yeah. Now, your reputation was a cavalier larger than life character. But would it be fair to say that that was what it was always like in those days, in the 70s and 80s,
Very, very,
90s?
very much so. I mean, uh, I, I had a few early scares in my career where I fractured vertebrae in my neck and I fractured vertebrae in my back. And it got to the stage where you worked hard, you played hard, because you didn't know if you was ever going to come back from racing one day in on your 2 feet, maybe in an ambulance. And so, yeah, I mean, that was the name of the game. You did play hard. And okay, you could in those days because the rules and regulations weren't as strict as they are today. I mean, you could go and have a drink in between races. I mean, say if I went down to I didn't ride in, well, I rode in the first and didn't ride to the, say, the second last or the last, I would be expected to go to the owners and trainers and have a drink with my connections. And I don't drink orange juice, and no one would bat an eyelid.
Can
That
I ask you about a story at Uttoxeter that I remember when you were beaten on an odds-on favourite, and one punter in particular was very angry. What happened?
Yeah, I must be the only jockey on God's earth that had a dustbin thrown at him during a race. A dustbin. Okay, rides this day. Three red hot favourites. The first one got well stuffed. I think the second one fell, and it's a 4 horse race. I'm riding for Jeff King, and this horse has to be dropped out. So I'm last of four, and I'm coming by the winning post to go round the bend to go out the second circuit. And this geezer must have backed the first two, and he sees me trailing the field on this red hot favourite, and he lost it. He must have lost it because I don't know where he got the dustbin from. All right, there was plenty of hospitality sort of tents there, but all of a sudden this dustbin came flying over the rail, spewing rubbish everywhere, accompanied by "Smith Eccles, you cheating bastard." I nearly fell off. I was laughing that much.
Great story. Although you had a place in the Grand National one year in 1979, what was the name of the horse you were going to ride that finished second under Bob Davis? There was
It's
a
not
horse.
a hero.
Yeah, something happened to you 10 days before. What was that stopped you riding in the Grand National?
It was actually 8 days before I was due to ride.
Right.
I was riding at Devon and Exeter, and I was riding for Ian Wardle on horse Master Reekin in a
Right.
handicap medal. And I'm dropping back out the frame, and I'm thinking about pulling up, having jumped the second last. When I saw in front of me, about 20 yards in front of me, a horse knocked one of the hurdle sections flat. So rather than pull up, I thought I'll skip through the gap. Anyway, the horse went to go through the gap, and what he must have done was put his hoof on the flat hurdle and went to go again, and it was like a tripwire. And it fired me down into the ground vertically like that. The first thing that hit the ground was the point of my head, right? Normally, you hit the ground at an angle. Went like that. And it compacted the spine. And I fractured two vertebrae and displaced one other in my neck. So I basically broke my neck, right? At the time, I didn't know because it was all sort of, there was pain there, but it was all sort of numb. I felt nauseous, whatever. So they took me back to the ambulance room and got me checked out. And I must admit, I was thinking about tomorrow, the day at Newbury. I had 4 good rides, and I was trying to swing it that I could, this might just wear off, and I might ride these 4 tomorrow. So I gave the doctor a bit of flannel about my shoulder being a little bit sort of stiff and whatever, and he didn't sign my medical record book. So to all intents and purposes, I could ride, because if you had an injury to stop you riding, they sign it in red ink. He didn't sign it in red ink. He put fit to ride, purely and simply because I conned him. Okay. Anyway, I got this jockey, Jamie Bouchard, to drive me back to Lambourne. I was staying at Frankham's, so I could ride these horses tomorrow. Anyway, half an hour into this journey, all this numbness wore off, and I had felt pain like I'd never felt in my life before. It was excruciating. Okay. And I'm popping pills and I'm washing them down with neat whiskey. Right. Anyway, I said, there's no way I'm going to ride tomorrow at Newbury, half an hour into this journey. And Jamie Bouchard, he drove me all the way back from Exeter Racecourse, all the way back to Newmarket. And that was a 6-hour trip. That's the longest journey I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
So to get back to Newmarket, I basically knocked myself out with painkillers and whiskey. And the following morning, I wake up, the Saturday morning, and the pain's still there. So we all have our own sort of private doctors and whatever, and sort of people who look after us. I had a guy called David Dandy who practiced in Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge, and I rang him up when I woke up. I said, David, I'm really sore here. He said, look, get yourself over to the hospital, and I'll see you. Anyway, my girlfriend drove me over at the time, got to the hospital. He was in surgery. He'd left a message to get me x-rayed, and then the girlfriend drove me back home. Well, as soon as we got home, the phone rings, and it was David Dandy on the phone. He said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm not doing much. I can feel like shit. He says, go and sit down. There's an ambulance on its way. I said, why? What's the matter? He says, you've broken your neck.
Wow.
But it transpires, the x-ray showed two fractures and a displacement in my vertebrae in my neck.
Wow.
Yeah, how lucky was I?
Very.
And as I say, I was due to ride Zongolero a week later. Bob Davis rode it, and him and Rubstick, they're on the running, battling it out. Another one comes up, Chris Grant, and he finished third. And I'm watching it with a collar on my neck from home like that. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
Tell me about what you do for Eventmasters.
Right, okay, I met Mark Shrewsbury and his wife Denise about 15 years ago. I think I've been working for them. And basically, they run corporate hospitality, especially at the Cheltenham Festival. And I'm employed to go into the different venues, whether it be a restaurant or private box. And I entertain the troops, so to speak, in the way that I run through the card, trying to find winners and whatever. And if I've got time, I'll tell the odd funny story. I've been doing it, as I say, for 15 years, and they do an exceptional job. They're very, very diligent. And for me, Denise is the rock behind the business, because Mark can blow hot and cold. Denise is always rock. And the beauty of it is, for me, and this is why I think they do good business. They always get repeat custom. There's a guy called Frank.
Frank Murphy, yeah.
He's been going there for 15 years, as long as I have. And I always know he's there because when I give him a bum tip, he always spouts off at me. Right? Okay? So I know he's been going there. But the point being, if a company gets repeat custom, they've got to be doing well. And they've been doing that, as I say, 15. So they become real friends of the family.
Yeah, they've been good, and 15 years is consistent. Steve, thank you very much indeed for talking on this Eventmaster special. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.